Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord.
A lot of people have told me, even today, that marijuana isn't addictive, and for me, I completely disagree. Marijuana was my drug of choice. There's obviously no physical addiction, but there is a psychological component to marijuana addiction. It becomes sort of a crutch. It's also almost like being in a relationship. When I talk about stopping marijuana use, I refer to it as like losing a brother. So what I do today to not use marijuana and to develop positive relationships in my life, because I don't consider marijuana my brother to be a positive relationship. I go to 12-step meetings, and I meet people, I talk to other addicts who are going through similar things, or just befriend addicts, because I find that we're a lot more alike than different. The outside characteristics of all of us are different, but the reasons we use are very much the same. Also, the most important thing I found to kind of recover from marijuana is I've learned to have fun in recovery. I found that to be hugely important. I've learned how to dance in recovery. I've learned how to laugh. I've learned how to live life and be a human being again. And I don't need drugs to make it happen.
Well, thanks for having me here. Can you guys hear me okay? Well, I just, especially what Tristan shared about that holding up the pillar of truth. I'm here just to be a witness and share with you, not to try to coerce or convince in one way or another, because you're going to land where you're going to land on this very controversial subject, especially in today's culture. But I think that sometimes we can just say, well, because it's legal, it's okay. Well, I kind of want to share with you a little bit of my journey, so you understand where it led me, where it led some other people in my life. So I grew up in an okay home. I mean, my parents got divorced when I was 3. So I had a stepdad by the time I was 5, had some encounters with my dad, the youngest of 6 kids. And life was okay. Parents were working in a big business in Norwalk, California, and so they would be at work, from 8 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, 5 days a week. And they had little cocktail parties and little things like that, and they would go visit people. And so I had some encounters with them at home, but I don't remember a whole lot of care being poured into me. I wasn't abused, I wasn't neglected, but I was just more bored. Bored and left to my own devices. My mom was a big proponent of freedom of choice, and she was not a believer. She was a very, very avid atheist. And so when I said no to her for the first time, she says it was one of the greatest moments in her life, because it meant I had independent thoughts. So to give you any kind of idea of how I grew up. Needless to say, by the time I was 12 years old, my older sister and brother-in-law, who had moved out of the house, lived about 60 miles away from where I lived, and I would go spend maybe a month of summer with them. Well, it was the summer of when I was 12 years old, and they were avid pot smokers. Avid pot smokers, all the time. Everything was about weed. And so for the first few summers that I would go there, I'd stay very much away from it. They would keep it away from me. But by the time I was 12, I was actually in the room while they were smoking. I can remember distinctly the room we were sitting in, exactly what was happening. They didn't pressure me. They said, hey, if you want some, you can have some. And I remember them, and I said no, because I still had some morals. I was just a 12-year-old kid, and they just left the joint there. And my youngest sister, my next oldest sister, who also would go spend the summers up there, I said, I think I want some of that. And so I smoked pot for the first time when I was 12 years old. And I remember what happened is I got this incredible backache. I don't know what that was about. I've never heard of backaches associated with marijuana, but I just remember, I was laid out to the point where I was crying, and they had to call my mom. My mom drove up and picked me up, okay? So fast forward, I didn't go home and start smoking weed all the time. But the next time it came around, later on, after I got back to school that year when I was 12 years old, of course, It was easier to do because I had already done it before. It wasn't a mystery. It wasn't a shock. Oh, yeah, I've done that before. But now it's not my older sister in some awkward situation. Now it's a friend. Now it's a buddy of mine. Now it's somebody I want to connect with. And so I started smoking weed at 12 years old on a regular basis. I can remember a little bit about that year, but what I remember most is pot became a drug of choice from 12 all the way to 13. And what really happened in that was that I just stopped caring. And I don't mean I ran away and just gave up on life, but as far as the things that used to make me a little more aware or cautioned, I just wasn't cautious anymore. It dulled the senses. It just made everything okay. And so what I really feel that did, and they say, is marijuana a gateway drug? I would say it's a doorway drug because it just opened another door. Or it made me forget to shut the door is really what happened. Because the door was already open because of my choices, but I didn't have enough foresight or awareness, really, in my life to shut it myself. You mix that with puberty, with all the other things that are going on with you as a 12 and 13-year-old, and it was just a recipe for disaster. So by the time I was 14, I was also taking LSD. I was also taking PCP, smoking PCP. I was also taking mushrooms. I was also drinking. So all these, taking speed pills. By the time I was in high school, I was pretty much a full-blown drug addict. Now, it didn't affect me because I was still all very much in the party mode. Everything was a party. It wasn't like I was in a homeless shelter. It wasn't like I was living out of a garbage can. Because mom and dad, hey, they were paying all my bills. So it was easy to steal money from them, steal money from friends, steal pot plants out of somebody's backyard, to go and make what I needed to happen to have this big party that was my life. By the time I was 16 years old, I was using just about every drug under the sun, got a girl pregnant, had a kid by the time I was 17. By that time, cocaine started entering my life. So fast forward a little bit further, by the time my third child was born from the second girl, so I've got 3 kids from 2 different girls, by the time I'm 20 years old, methamphetamine was a very, very big part of my life. So much so that I wasn't even there when my third child was born. Wasn't even there. Wasn't even a part of his life. That downward spiral from that point was some of the darkest years of my life. And I would even say some of the darkest years for my children because both of their moms were drug addicts as well. As a matter of fact, the girl that I got pregnant when I was 16 years old, my first child, she did get addicted to marijuana. She got highly addicted, could not wake up without it, could not survive a day without it. So you imagine a little 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old boy growing up with that environment where mom's always a little dizzy, mom's always a little distant. And that became her drug of choice, which actually spiraled her downhill and sent her to 18 years, or 18 months in Chowchilla State Prison because of a fight she got in over drugs. So in my life, as things progressed forward, I look back a little bit and I realized that I was just kind of putting Band-Aids on myself in some ways. There was a lot of stuff going on in my life at the age of 12 that I should have been processing in a sober way. I should have been thinking about not having my dad around. I should have been thinking about talking with somebody about that. But I could just turn down the volume of life, put a little Band-Aid on what ended up really being a festering boil, which ended up really being an entire infection of my body, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and I never dealt with it. So by the time I was 26 years old, I was a tweaker. You've probably seen him around. Probably seen him downtown. People that move a little weird, and God loves them just as much as anybody else. Lost all kinds of things in my life. Lost all kinds of hope, all kinds of people. Had no relationship with any of my kids. My mom, nobody trusted me. I even got kicked out of my drug dealer's house. That's how bad it was. When your drug dealer doesn't trust you, things are bad. But I remember at 26 years old, I was basically living on the street. I had expended every single resource I could possibly steal and manipulate. And my mom sent me a bus ticket to Spokane, Washington. Full-blown meth addict, I end up here in this town. My brother, the same brother-in-law that got me high for the first time. Happens to live in Deer Park. And he picked me up, strong Christian, loves the Lord, took one look at me and says, "You're not living with me, but I got a place you can go." And he took me to the east entrance of the Union Gospel Mission. I checked in there. Rock bottom of my life. Lost everything. Had a duffel bag full of dirty clothes. That was it. Sat there and had a lot of time of reflection, a lot of time of pain. It was at that point that really God got a hold of my life, started turning things around. That was also about the time that I told you that my son's mother went to Chowchilla State Prison. So she sent me my 10-year-old boy to come live with me while I was living in a homeless shelter. So the story gets pretty good from that point on. It's a story of restoration, where I start to really go through some counseling, start to understand some things, go through the program at the mission, rebuild relationships with all three of my kids, find my wife here in Spokane. Thank you, Spokane. We get married, and we are called to be youth pastors down in Portland, Oregon, where I've been ever since. Except for last September, God called me back to work with the homeless and the broken up here in Spokane. So I just took the job as the youth outreach director at Union Gospel Mission to go back kind of where it all started for me. But I want to point out one very significant thing. About 4 years ago, doing all kinds of ministry, really thriving ministry. Big youth ministry, internship program, missions trips, exciting stuff. Doing stuff with our denomination in the district and the national level. So I had my hands everywhere. I mean, it was just awesome. Things were just thriving. But something inside of me got very clouded and dark. I was doing so many things, but there was just something inside of me that I felt like I was falling to pieces. And I kind of hit rock bottom again. I didn't sin. I didn't fall into any gross sin. I didn't have an affair. I didn't become a drug addict again. But inside, I just began to feel that things closed off of me. And I took a 10-week sabbatical. 10 weeks. That's a long time. And during that time, I began to seek counseling. I didn't think I needed it anymore. I think I had it from a long time ago. Thought I was good. So I started meeting with a counselor, and we started really going back through my life and started understanding all these different things and taking me back to 16 years old when I overdosed and ended up in a state hospital, to 14 when I broke into a school and trashed it and got arrested, to all these different things, trying to find these different mile markers in my life. And I went back to 7 years old. And I realized there were some things in my life pre-7 that I had an idea of my life was this, and it really wasn't. Again, it wasn't abuse, but it was some pretty severe neglect. And when I reflect on that, and I'm great now, I really walked through that process. But when I go back to that, I realize, what was 12 years old about? Well, what 12 years old was about pain in my life that was starting to emerge at the age of 12. And my answer was weed. So again, it put a Band-Aid on a disease. And so when that Band-Aid wasn't enough, and that Band-Aid of pot wasn't enough, guess what? I had to put another Band-Aid on of LSD, another Band-Aid of PCP, another Band-Aid of cocaine, of meth, and it just became a never enough Band-Aid for what was really going on in my life. So I say that to say to you, is marijuana a gateway drug? It's definitely a doorway drug. I think that there are young people that walk through life that could use just some love, some care, some value. But instead, they would go to something to alter their reality, alter their mentality, because that eases the pain. And not every pot user has got some childhood wound. But there is something dangerous about turning down the volume of life. We're meant to live life. We're meant to hear life. We're meant to understand. We're even meant to feel and deal with pain. You know, if you get a numbing shot in your arm, that's one of the most dangerous things you can have, because you can burn it on the stove and not know it. Bottom line is, God gave us nerves so we wouldn't burn our skin. He gave us this awareness so we wouldn't be damaged. And if if pot is something that just turns it down, then we're not going to feel that and ever experience it and walk through it in the way that I feel like he wants us to. I now have 8 grandkids. Yes. 7 of them are granddaughters. Yes. 7 of their names starts with vowels. That's a really hard thing I get them mixed up all the time. The reason why I share that is because I got to spend some time with them. And I have a little 12-year-old granddaughter. 12 years old. Just tiny girl. Her dad's not around either. She's got a stepdad. But I look at her, and I look at the way my daughter is with her. 2 things happen. All that time I was smoking weed, I wasn't around my kids. Because I had started down a path. So I will never know what it's like to have an 8-year-old kid. I will never know what it's like to see my kids grow up before 10 and 11. Never. I'll never see that. But I see it in my grandkids. And I see my little 12-year-old granddaughter who's got some of the similar situations that I had. But I see this mom loving her, pouring into her life, where I know my little granddaughter's not going to need weed. Because she gets to talk about things. She gets to play soccer. She gets to be in band. And I think that's really what we need to do with this generation. That's really how we need to speak to them. Not just anti-weed, but pro-life, pro-awareness. Because I really believe this. If we promote sobriety and life in such a way that makes it just so profound, exciting, challenging, and wonderful, then this whole weed thing will just drift off into nothingness. And it just won't become fun anymore or important anymore. Amen to that? So I just want to challenge you to make life good for this younger generation. Pour into them. And let's put life in motion in such a way that kids wouldn't even consider weed, not because they're afraid of it, but just because they simply don't need it. Thank you.
So the long-term effects of weed, I would say marijuana had an effect on my memory. It also had an effect on my mood. At the time, I didn't realize that it was affecting my brain as much as it did. But I still think that a lot of my anxiety today is from my use of marijuana. I also think that marijuana added to my not being healthy. My lungs, I had a lot of tar built up in my lungs that took over 1.5 years to get rid of. Problems breathing. I had sports asthma, which has gone away since I haven't used marijuana. So I think, my advice to someone who's trying to quit smoking marijuana is really find a group of people who are not smoking it and hang out with them. And if that's at a 12-step group, great. If that's somewhere else like school or work, or just get in with a group of people who are supportive of you and who aren't bringing that drug around you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to one-up on Ryan. I have 11 grandchildren. So I'm here today to talk about, I'm with the Spokane Police Department Special Investigating Unit, which is the narcotics unit. When I looked at the initial brochure, it said Spokane DEA. I will tell you, within the state of Washington and pretty much the state of Colorado, the DEA is basically hands-off because of the administration with the U.S. Attorney General's office does not want to delve into dealing with states that have decriminalized marijuana. They haven't made it legal, they just decriminalized it because all the other states, there are still laws prohibiting it. So what the Spokane Police Department Narcotics Unit does, and that's what I could speak about, and is that we really don't investigate marijuana much anymore. I will tell you really quick, because I only have so much time. The last case that I worked on actively was something out of the Violent Gang Task Force. You guys remember a year ago, they took down a bunch of the gang members out of California that were bringing oxycodone into Spokane. And actually, it was related to the same group that we took down a year and a half before that, but they just replaced the ones that were arrested at that time. They had one individual that did not want to plead out to federal charges, and I had an informant that could get into him, so we were buying ounces of marijuana from him. And from the funny side of it, he had a federal probation ankle bracelet on, and he had to be home at 7:30 every night. So we'd go out and buy from him way up north, and he would take my informant, and he'd be flying through North Spokane about 70 miles an hour, trying to get back to his house before 7:30, because if not, an alarm would go off, and he'd be in violation of his federal probation. So that was basically, we bought from him 6 times. I filed charges against him, and that was enough to get him to plead out. He was one of the last ones to plead out to the felony distribution charges for oxycodone. The good thing is that he actually pled out to 3 of my delivery charges. So after he serves his federal time, he is a 2-time convicted felon, and if he gets one more felony conviction, he will be a career criminal and go away for life, based on our marijuana buys from him. But that's pretty much the last, I will say, large marijuana sale investigation that we conducted. In Spokane, right now, we have so many marijuana grows that the Department of Liquor Control Board, as you well know, Initiative 502, legalizing or decriminalizing marijuana in this state, they have so many grows out there with individuals trying to get licensed to grow marijuana, and so they can be legal. And then on the other side, you have medical marijuana there's no controls over it right now. At the recreational level, they have a 25% tax on growers. They have a 25% tax on wholesalers, and then they have a 25% tax on the retailers. So, if you're a marijuana grower in Spokane County, Stevens County, and you've been growing marijuana for years, are you going to step forward and volunteer to start paying Washington State taxes? No, you're not. And, to no surprise, the individuals that have stepped forward, because they have issued well over 100 licenses to grow marijuana, there are a number of people that have not initiated a business yet because of the cost of getting into the marijuana grow operation. If you don't know, they have some huge grow operations in Airway Heights. And there's a lot of money behind it, a lot of money. If you saw in the paper last night, I brought a copy of it here. Liquor Control Board, actually the state legislature, the Senate has actually passed a law. They're going to initiate a law to start taxation on medical marijuana, to start to get some control over it. Because right now, what we have in Spokane, I know of a lot of grow operations, but basically we don't do anything with them. But there's grow operations that are selling to the medical marijuana dispensaries, and they're not paying any taxes to the state. It's illegal to sell to medical marijuana dispensaries because they're supposed to be buying their marijuana from who? We don't know. So the state is trying to take control of that because they want the tax dollars behind it. And they're going to fight tooth and nail to prevent that because they don't want to, reveal all their patients that are buying from them and whether they have a medical marijuana card or not. We have, in Spokane, we have numerous strong-arm robberies at these these marijuana grows. They do not call the police department to report it. The amount of money that's being taken because they do not want to reveal their grow operation to us, nor the amount of money that was taken from them. We hear it through people on the street, from informants, that this person was basically strong-arm robbed, and the last one was last Friday. out in the valley. Law enforcement, it's almost right now, it's kind of hands-off for us. It's kind of weird when you walk into a judge and have them sign a warrant and the judge asks you, well, isn't this legal? Why are you getting a search warrant for this place? We have the prosecutor's office. If we have a case on a marijuana grow, is 100% behind us. Because of the fact that people have medical marijuana grows, they're allowed to have 15 plants. Okay? 15 plants. The last one I walked into, he had 200 plants. He was just a little over. Okay? He is allowed to have 24 ounces of dried marijuana to smoke. Okay? We, because it's medical marijuana, take all but 15 plants that we have to allow him to pick out as his favorite. And I will tell you, they love their plants, and they pick out 15 plants, and we take the rest out of the house. And the last one, I left the lights in the one room with the big plants, and the plants were this high, and I took everything else in the other 2 grow rooms out of the house. And that's what we'd have to do on every operation. Patrol runs into them all the time, and they walk away from them. They notify us that there was a grow operation in this house, but we have no activity on it, and we're pretty much hands-off on it because it's decriminalized in the state of Washington. And it's not going to get any better in this state. The last time I saw a list of applicants for licenses, it was well over 1,200 people that want licenses to grow marijuana in this state. So that's the big picture in Spokane County and Washington State right now. We won't even talk about Colorado because it's out of control in Colorado too. They will not even, basically don't even want us to go down and talk to law enforcement in Colorado to see how they're dealing with problems because we're going to try and solve our own. And basically it's this right now with marijuana. So it all falls onto you, the parents, to deal with this. Okay? That's basically where it, just like Ryan said, it falls on the parents to watch over their kids. Like I said, we have 11 grandkids, our adult children, and speaking as a parent, the idea that parents want to be friends with their kids, they have to be parents first. And they have to be, and I'm a police officer, I'm a type A personality, right? I'm suspicious of everybody. Do we have any medical marijuana advocates in here? I mean, it's that whole thing with me is that you have to be aware of what your kids are doing and what they're not doing is very important. So I'm going to show a little bit about here what's happening in Spokane. Remember back in 2000 when we were at the peak of our meth labs? I'm still part of the clandestine meth team here. We had 2 meth labs last year in Spokane County. Hopefully we won't have any this year, but we always run into at least one a year. But now we're having honey oil labs in Spokane County. And I'm going to present a little bit about this. If you would start the first one for me. And we'll go through this pretty fast. But this is what's happening in Spokane.
We're going to show you how to make butane. Here's what you'll need. Butane. I use Calibrite. Others use Vector. Okay,
this is something that I'm not teaching you. You just go on YouTube and look this up. This is how you basically make honey oil, which is basically THC that you put into e-cigarettes or just smoke it in a marijuana pipe.
Take your buds, break out all the little stems. You can break it up further if you want. Some do, I do. Then you take your pipe, you stuff it like this, whatever. I like to take a pop bottle, cut it in half, then have a funnel and a scoop. Pretty simple. Once the weed is filled to the top, take my mesh and I secure it on with a zip tie. That as simple as it is, that's how you make oil. When going out to do the extraction, the pipe is going to get extremely cold. You're going to want to wrap it with something that's secure. Next, we'll be going outside to do our extraction.
Kind of mumbling here a little bit, but what he's saying with this glass tube is that he puts the towel around it so the butane gas that's sprayed into the marijuana gets really cold. It's like liquid nitrogen, right?
Huh?
You sure in that pipe?
Alright, here we are outside. Always do your extraction outside. It comes up to you with a lit cigarette, shoo them away. And you've got boiling water, good to boil it before you come out with butane.
Okay, what he's saying here is you're putting boiling water in the pot, and he says you have to do this outside because it's butane gas, and you don't want a closed environment.
Pour it in. But probably reaches the bottom of the plate. Plate on top. And you just blast your butane through the pipe. Go.
Yeah.
Okay, this process, compared to meth labs, when you process methamphetamine, it normally took about, depends on the cook, sometimes 12 hours, sometimes 20 hours, if they did the red P method that was prevalent here in Spokane County. This period, it takes, you could do that in 15 minutes to do that. The biggest process here is basically grinding up the marijuana. These little glass pipes right here, I brought one in here to show you guys because we went down to a local paraphernalia store just to go in and buy that. $25 for this. Of course, you could buy them on Amazon.com too, probably cheaper, maybe avoid the tax. But the fact is that they say kids can't go in there and buy these to do this. Yeah, exactly. Part of that whole thing with this honey oil, which is basically, they say it's honey because it looks like just like dark honey. And they basically take it and smoke it. Well, the big thing that's happening now is the e-cigarettes or the vaporizer pens that are out there. And if you've seen it now, you've seen people walking around town now with the e-cigarettes and smoking it, you could just basically use these to smoke your marijuana. There's no odor to it. You can't smell anything. Vaporizer pens. Yeah, I'll leave this out front here. But the thing is with it, I was at Sacred Heart talking to a group of nurses about another topic. And one of the things they brought up about this is because the problems they're having in the high schools here in Spokane, that the kids are smoking the marijuana in the bathrooms, they're smoking it in their cars, and you don't smell anything when the kids come back into school. They're just high. So again, the fact is how these kids can get these pens. Can you buy them when you're a juvenile? Oh yeah. You could buy anything. So the fact is one of parents not being aware. If you see your child with an e-cigarette or you see his friend with an e-cigarette, the fact is most likely the kid's not smoking flavored tobacco. I'm just saying. So again, it's being part of the parents to be aware of what their children are doing and who they're hanging out with. It's just incredible out there. We use informants all the time to do what we do, controlled buys. And the first thing we do with an informant, we get them, we take them to a fire station or somewhere, we do a strip search on them. And what do they have on their person all the time now? Marijuana. Because it's legal. And so they don't even flinch at the fact that we pull out a bud of marijuana or a baggie of marijuana out of their pocket and we put it on the counter because they're going to go buy heroin for us or methamphetamine or pharmaceuticals. We don't go buy marijuana anymore. And so for them, within that drug culture, they know that police really don't care. It's a civil infraction in the state of Washington now, Spokane, city of Spokane, to have marijuana or smoke it in public. Okay? You can't walk downtown and smoke it down on Main Street because a police officer will stop you and he'll issue you a civil infraction. He won't issue you a misdemeanor citation. He'll issue you a civil infraction. So I get the civil infraction. I don't appear in court to pay it. What happens? It's a parking ticket. Nothing really. So go to Seattle, go to Pike's Market, and you see people walking all over smoking marijuana. And law enforcement doesn't do anything about it. And that's basically because that's basically how police have been directed to handle it. It's not that way in Spokane. But again, the citation is issued to the individual, nothing happens to them. So it's going to get more prevalent, more prevalent, more prevalent. Because people are going to be, they go smoke in the cars and they go into the bars to drink. The biggest thing that you have in reference to marijuana is, for kids, is how do you buy marijuana? Where do you buy it at? And how much does it cost? I mean, 2 fingers, 1 finger, 2 fingers, 40 bucks, 20 bucks, depends on where you get it. An ounce goes for $260 on the street. In the dispensaries, recreational stores, it's normally $360 and up for the marijuana. So how do you afford that? You steal. In the drug world, that's how you pay for things. Especially for kids that are young and don't have money unless their parents give them a lot of money. So again, you have to be aware of what's going on in your household in reference to your kids. The fact that you mentioned money disappears from your wallet. Now, if it disappeared from mine, I'd go, God, where did I spend that? You know? I was just telling my wife the other day, I'm missing all this money that I got from some of my students. I put it somewhere safe, but I don't know where I put it. But I'll find it one of these days. Okay? Okay, can you run the PDF file, please? This one right here? Cool. Okay, so all of us, way back used to know what hash oil was, right? I mean, I grew up in Montana. There was marijuana. We called ditchweed at that time, right? So the idea here, there's hash oil that's been around for a long time, and that's basically what they're talking about, the THC level, which gives you the high 30 to 80%. They're even saying projection it's up to 90% THC when you smoke it. As compared to when I was in high school and stuff, the ditchweed was around 6%, 4 to 6%. Most of the stuff the kids had were stems. Washington State was always known for its marijuana quality, and they said it was normally sometimes 28 to 32% THC because it was good stuff. But it talks about here the hash oil sells for $20 to $50 a gram in the Seattle area, and that's pretty much on line with us. It's a little cheaper here just because of the population. You could pretty much buy this anywhere at the dispensaries that they have here. But like I said, you have to pay an exorbitant price for it. And it's a lot easier for these people and kids to manufacture their own. And they show the demonstration here. You basically they're saying basically you use all parts of the plant. You go to these individuals that have, we've actually taken 3 of these honey oil labs down here in the last 4 months. And they don't use all parts of the plant. They just use the bud because they want quality. And that's pretty much the pictures that you saw on the video of what these individuals do with it. And one of the things that they always say with this is that you want to be in an open environment. You don't want to be in a closed space, right? And the problem is with the last 3 labs that we took down, One of them was in a motel room. The county did it when it blew up in the motel room out in the county. The other one was in a basement of a house. And the last one was in a motel room at the west end of Spokane up on the hill. Very closed environments. And the problem is with these things, you have a butane gas. And one of the things that you couldn't hear with the guy in the video is that you don't want to smoke when you're doing it. It's sort of like our old meth cooks. They said you don't want to use your product when you're making the meth because when you have the Coleman fuel and you're heating it on an open flame and you can't figure out why it blows up, right? But most of the time it's because they're high on meth when they were cooking Coleman fuel. Okay, they talk about pesticides, and I will say that's because it's government talking about the bad part of in this process to make it look worse. Anybody read High Times in here? God, you guys aren't admitted, are you? Okay, High Times is the marijuana magazine, basically talks about how to manufacture marijuana and describes the different kinds of marijuana plants that are out there. One of the things they talk about, and they put a big article out last year about the fact that people are trying to grow marijuana fast, right? And how do you make marijuana grow faster? Fertilize it, right? You go into these grows and you have these 50-gallon drums of fertilizer to make these plants grow up because they have to go up normally 3 stages when you grow marijuana. So they're trying to tell these people to go organic, right? Because of the fact that you don't want to start smoking all these chemicals because marijuana smoke is not bad for you, right? It doesn't hurt your lungs. It's not like cigarette smoke. It's totally different. So that's a joke, right? So, you know, they put in the fact that pesticides is hazardous to you, so try and use a, purified butane gas, or you use plants that didn't use fertilizers or pesticides to kill the bugs. The idea, again, all this stuff is on the internet. We didn't have that in the year 2000 when we had all the meth labs. Most of the time, a lot of the stuff you could find on the internet, there was no video, but you could find recipes for cooking meth. Now all this stuff here, you can go on and find out how to grow marijuana. All that stuff. This goes through all the incidences, starting back in 2008. This is a house that's showing the butane gas that was actually used in the previous video, the pipes, and basically showing what this looks like. And it goes back to the same thing with all of our meth labs. When you see the final product, what they would do to clean it up to make it look nice. At Christmas time, they would actually color it red for Christmas. St. Patty's Day was coming up. You would go out and buy green crystal because it was St. Patty's Day. And they want to clean this product up so it looks better when you sell it. The idea of going out and you see people buy case lots of butane gas. And I hope it doesn't get back to the same way it used to be back in 2000, 2004, when these people would just go to all these stores and these people would jack the prices up for this butane gas to make a bigger profit because they knew people were coming in to buy it. This is an explosion caused by there was a flame or some spark with the butane gas in a confined space causing the explosion. And that just kind of goes off and continue in that. I got one last video up there. Here it is. We're not going to go very long with this because the language gets bad.
I'm the kid.
This is basically
Sunday weed column.
Marijuana etiquette.
I love weed so much that I decided to make a whole show about it. When I started it last fall, I had no idea that weed was about to be legalized in 2 states. All kinds of
and you'll see
came
my
to
home
light.
state up there
But
of
the most
Montana has
fascinating
medical
one was also
marijuana.
the fastest growing.
Okay, this is
Butane hash oil,
basically
an
showing what
extract
you
that's
have
pure
here again of
THC.
honey oil, butane honey oil
Welcome to
process
Weed
here.
Kid.
And this whole video here is basically set up to show kids. I call kids because it's more directed at them. The idea of how to use the marijuana, how to make the honey oil, and the process through it, to it.
And said, here,
you know, within our community here, there are a lot of hardcore drug dealers here, like in any other large community.
I definitely smoked oil in
they will,
first time. I was at a
they take
rainbow
big
gathering.
steps to protect their product.
This dude passed me a bong. I said, here.
And they're not necessarily a threat to law enforcement,
At least a minute or two later.
because they're not worried about law enforcement kicking in their door at gunpoint and stealing their money.
I asked him what is going on.
They're not worried about us. They're worried about the other dealers out there that know about it.
Dabbing is basically having a dabber, which is
And
something
this is the world these guys live in, and this is just what their life is. And what Ryan has talked about, how what kids see, they get involved in the drug world, this is what they see all the time out there. You can go ahead and cut that. And how do you keep these kids out of this environment? Because it's who you associate with in the community that leads you to what I always call darker and darker rooms that you go into. And once you start using the drugs, you get introduced to what I call a harder core group of people within our community. And there is a very hardcore clientele here in this community. And it's not here, it's up in Stevens County. Stevens County, they don't have very many deputies up there. There's some huge grow operations that they don't even touch up there. You go down to the Tri-Cities. I mean, it just gets worse down there. And how are we going to stop this? They always say that there's no way in this drug war, this war against drugs, that we'll ever win. Well, I've been in law enforcement now for almost 34 years, and there's never been a war against drugs. We've always been so far behind the ball on how to deal with these people. I mean, my drug unit used to be 9 detectives, now it's 7 detectives. The Regional Drug Task Force is basically being cut. And you got DEA that's here, but DEA's, they have limits of what they have to go into. Like I said, they're not going after marijuana anymore in this state. So it's not going to get better for us. It's actually, in my feeling, it's going to get worse. Pharmaceuticals, right? Oxycodone, hydrocodone, methadone. I mean, the fact is and I do this with a DEC program, the fact that you go to your doctor, and I got a really bad chest cold when that flu went around, right? Someone got sick in my office, next person got sick. Pretty soon, my whole office was sick. Finally got my chest hurt so bad, I went to the doctor. Coughing, right? I couldn't get it out of my chest. So he wanted to give me a narcotic cough medicine, right? And I mean, it's just boom, just like that. When my Achilles tendon had surgery on, the script that I got for oxycodone, he gave me 5, and he said, you call me up if you want more. I mean, it's just amazing how many of the doctors just give those pills out. The number of young people I deal with that are hooked on pharmaceuticals is incredible too. And how do they get into pharmaceuticals? It's the same thing. There's that door that's open to them through marijuana. It is so easily accessible within our community to have anybody downtown, walk downtown, and people are selling it all the time. Seattle. They drive around, they advertise, they go and meet people to sell marijuana to them. Go on Craigslist when you get home. You could buy marijuana on Craigslist. And they're not afraid that it's going to be me parked out in a truck watching the sale go down. They're not afraid of law enforcement here. So you have to be aware of what your kids are doing on the internet, like parents have been told on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. We talk about bullying on Facebook. Well, there's another side to the internet of where they're getting their drugs, where they're meeting people. And you have to know where your kids go. That's the big thing. That's it. I'm going to stop right there because I can just go on for a while. We got some questions and answers here. Yes? No. I will tell you, a couple weeks ago, a certain channel had a kind of short documentary on an outlaw motorcycle gang here in Spokane, Washington, talking about how they were collecting toys and coats for kids. And I'm going, wait a minute. That's organized crime. The state clubhouse is in Spokane, Washington, and we have a television station glorifying an outlaw motorcycle gang that exists on the sale of drugs. Slavery, prostitution, and I can go on. And so to get the televisions to come here and support us or law enforcement in reference to this, no. They won't do that. It's unfortunate, but no, they do not support that.
But, you know, I would say that the big thing with marijuana is that it's a mental addiction. So, you know, I think that anything that will stimulate the brain, you know, is good for coping with, you know, marijuana withdrawal, you know. I mean, it could be anything, really, you know, writing, reading. It could be playing video games. I mean, they found in video games, like, it targets the same area of the brain that drugs do. Again, it's substitution, but, you know, in ways we can say that it's not as bad because we're not putting a chemical into our body, you know. We're not doing something that's illegal, you know. So that's ways that we can get through it, you know, is to substitute one habit for a less bad habit, you know. That's one way to look at it.
I've got the question, does marijuana lead to harder drugs? And I kind of dealt with that a little bit. But just to kind of elaborate a little bit more, I think he touched on it, especially when he said it introduces you to, I would say, it's not like you're going to smoke weed, then all of a sudden you're going to have a craving for meth. That's not the way it's going to happen. But the association and the communities that you begin to get involved in, everything leads to the next layer. I remember dealing with some young adults talking about this whole issue quite some time ago. And if you can kind of look at it as this chart, okay, so like almost like a speedometer, okay, so just picture a speedometer in your mind. And I kind of have these, I kind of got this illustration of what leads to the next thing. So if you can picture on one end, careful, okay, that's a careful area. And that's where we want to stay. Because right next to careful is casual. Okay, so if you're in careful, you might bump against casual. Careful to casual. You're kind of touching, but you stay in careful. You might step into casual once in a while, and then you can step back into careful. But once you fully enter casual, okay, then you're bumped up against careless. And that's how it happens. It's like from careful to casual, and then you may stay in casual. Oh, it's okay, it's just casual. I'm just a casual user, casual. My friends are real casual about it. But you start to be introduced to the world of careless, because I guarantee you get in those environments, you're seeing people make more and more stupid decisions. And then when you enter that room of careless, then you're right next to reckless. And that's when things get really, really bad. That's where you see probably some of the larger organizational things, some of the things where people would hurt people based on the drug environment. And so I think it's a good way to put it to young people. Just say, look at this dial and where are you living your life? If you're living your life in casual, then you're just a step away from careless. And if you're living your life in careless, you're just a step away from reckless. And what comes after reckless, I don't know, but I don't want to find out. And so I think that's really what it touched on, is that it's more than just the physiology of it being a drug, but it's the environment and the culture and the community that you enter into with every step along the way.
Okay, I had a question here. I am in so much pain, marijuana helps me, don't judge. Okay? I don't judge people that use marijuana if they need marijuana. If you look back in the past, marijuana, where they basically said medical marijuana was for people with cancer, MS, the fact that they're getting radiation treatment, they can't eat, they would take marijuana. People that have chronic pain, I don't have a problem with you using marijuana. I mean, we've had people in the past, and it's not funny, but these people have medical marijuana card, they have cancer, and they're dying. There's nothing wrong with it. But when we get involved with it, is that they're selling it to all the kids in the neighborhood to make extra money. And so you go knock on their door, and you arrest him. You don't take him to jail, you charge him with distribution, because he wants to make extra money for whatever reason. That's when you get law enforcement involved with it. Not the fact that you're in pain, you use it. But it's gotten to the point that marijuana, there was a certain doctor who was 80-some years over in Redmond, Washington, that for some reason the state could not touch him. But you can get a medical marijuana card for $200. It lasts 1 year. You give him another $200 in a year, he renews your medical marijuana card. And what reason did you give him for needing medical marijuana? You said that, well, I need medical marijuana, I have chronic pain. That's it, boom. He'd give you a card for $200. Who was making the money here? He was, right? It got to the point here that you would go to these medical marijuana grows, and they are a provider. So I grow 15 plants, and I'm providing for Ryan, okay? I can't provide for you or you or you. I can only provide for one person. I can't smoke my own product. But the problem is they have all these medical marijuana cards that they have for all these different people. So we'd call these people up and they'd go, what? Who are you? No. So they were falsifying the paperwork. So how are we supposed to deal with that? I mean, it just became more and more complex for us. People would have 10 people I'm a provider for. You're taking away their medicine. Well, the problem is that they were selling to make money. There are people out there that will have a legitimate reason for using marijuana, and I don't fault them for that. Law enforcement gets involved when they start being involved in distribution or providing for juveniles. Okay?
I have a question that says, as a Christian, what are the best ways to counsel kids who aren't handling emotions and life, who went through things, but now family's healing? That's a great question. Life is tough. It's a profound statement. Life is tough. And I think the younger that we can help young people understand that you can't solve all of life's issues. You kind of just have to walk through some things. You know, friendships, rejection, boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, emotions. And I think the more that we can sit down with young people and not try to protect them or, I would say, fix them. Because I'll tell you this, sometimes young people just need you to listen and not fix and not give them the answer. I know, I got, again, like I shared, I got custody of my son when he was 10, and then I've had my other two kids live with me when they were all teenagers, and I did parenting even as a Christian, did parenting pretty wrong during the teenage years because I was always trying to organize and fix and repair, and this is the way you need to do it. Not that I had any of the answers, but I was the parent, so this is what I had to do. And it's not a matter of just letting them walk through whatever they want to walk through in their life on their own, but sometimes kids just need to process. As a matter of fact, often when you're counseling a kid, and you'll notice from any really good actual counselor, they do a lot of listening. And they do a lot of helping you to find the result in a good, healthy way, rather than stuffing it, rather than hiding it, rather than rejecting it. And I think the better listeners we can be as parents, just say, tell me, how are you feeling about that? You know, a kid may say, well, you know, this person at school I'm having this issue with. and I want to fight them. Instead of coming and saying, well, violence is bad, you better not do that or you're going to be in big trouble. Maybe processing with them and saying, okay, so what makes you feel that angry? Because there may be other things in their life that are tied to that anger. Now, that's just one of many issues, but I think the better listeners, that's the number one thing, the better listeners we can be as parents, listening to what they're saying, helping them find those conclusions on their own. Not the wrong conclusions, but the right conclusions on their own. We're going to be better for them. And then I think another thing that's really key, and this is a big thing I learned, and to this day, my youngest is 25, my oldest is 31, and to this day, they would tell anybody that their favoriteest times of us talking about things was when I was transparent about my own faults. When I was honest when I was too angry, and I apologized to them. When I was really, I said, hey, I struggle with stuff too. They would tell you that. So I think the more that we can say, I made a decision too quick on grounding you for this issue. Or, you know what, I got really angry at work today. And the more we can relate to them, again, not to be their buddy, but to let them know that you're going to walk through life's issues your whole life. But we need to find it in a healthy way. And so, first one is listening, and the second one is transparency. And I would say the third one is Jesus. I mean, I'll just be straight up, whether you're a believer here or not. If it wasn't for Jesus, man, all my kids and probably grandkids would be drug addicts right now. Because he interrupted my life, gave me something to hold on to, and give some guidance to my kids. And I didn't force any of my kids into Christianity, none of that. But really just presenting what the gospel had done to me. I'm not a lawyer. The Bible doesn't call us to be lawyers. He calls us to be witnesses. And those are two very different things. So being able to tell my kids, hey, this is just what's happened in my life, and them to see that, the good and the bad, the faults and the gifts, really helped us have a great relationship. And right now, an interesting dynamic is happening. I'm a great-grandfather. Love my grandkids. I'm telling you, grandkids are like God's gift for all the problems of parenting. It's like, here you go. You walk through it. But I can tell you right now that I have the best relationship with my kids. And they'll call me for advice. They'll call me for coaching times. Just, hey, Dad, I'm walking through this. What do you think? And it's really, really special. And I think it was because I learned to do those two things, and obviously have Jesus be at the core. So, thank you.
Okay, here's the question. Can my parents share their alcohol with me? I'm 18 years old. Yes or no? No. Okay, the question was actually, can they share my weed with me? I'm 18 years old. Under state law, you have to be 21 years of age to smoke a cigarette, right? Or to be out in public. But you have to be 21 years of age to be in possession of marijuana, too. So, what is it if your parents in your house give you a marijuana cigarette to smoke? They have just committed a felony. They have just committed the crime of distribution of a controlled substance. Who's going to investigate that? No one, right? Because it's in the privacy of your own house. And parents have to make that decision again, whether at the age of 18 they want to introduce their kid to marijuana. Now, I've had friends that that use marijuana, and they've told me part of the whole thing about the fact of short-term memory gone, all that kind of stuff, and they were in college, and they finally quit because they wouldn't remember what they read in a book. So, and he said, these guys that tell me the same thing is the fact that at that young age to start smoking something that affects your ability to be cognizant of what's going on in your life. I mean, we have enough problems with alcohol, right? But your parents can give it to you. They can make that decision. But then you go to the fact that you and your other friends at the house and the parents give it to your friend that's with you. And then that friend goes out and tells other people that, hey, you can get some bud over at Bill's house. Yeah, you go over there, they'll just let you smoke it. And it just continues. All of a sudden, these people figure out, and I've had this, they figured out that I could start selling a little bit of my marijuana that I'm growing and make a profit here. Well, then all of a sudden law enforcement used to get involved in that, okay? And we'd go in there and knock on doors. And we do what we call soft knocks. How you doing? Spokane Police Department, we have a search warrant. And we'd walk in and talk to them. And maybe we arrested them, maybe we didn't. But I will tell you, the fact is, and this is a really quick story talking about money as a profit. We had a gentleman we arrested 3 times in 1 year. He was 26 years old, 26, for distribution of controlled substances. Well, the second to the last time we got him with 40 pounds of packaged BC bud and $60,000 in his van. It's so cool holding $60,000 in your hand. 4 months later, we found him. Short northwest in Stevens County. He moved to a house in the middle of nowhere. And we went and knocked on his door. He had 55 pounds of packaged BC bud, all stacked in a corner. He had 56 marijuana plants and $76,000 in the drawers in the bathroom. He got 60 days in Stevens County Jail on his 3rd felony within 1 year. That's better. He would have gotten 30 days in Spokane County. So they slapped him in Stevens. I'm just telling you. And his word to me, he says, you know, that wasn't my money. It's going to take me about 5 months to pay that back. So, there's money in it. Yes?
I have a question about how this, if you buy alcohol and beer, you can drink several beers without the effect if you buy alcohol and a bottle of whiskey and one swallow.
Oh, no. It's all about quality. The better the quality, the higher the price I can charge you for it. They will not sell you ditchweed. It puts a bad, as a business, that put a bad name on my business if I sold crap, right? I want to sell the best stuff that I can. And so I'm not going to bring in a low quality. And you know, the fact is I don't know where you can get low quality. Washington State has been known. They outdid British Columbia in reference to their THC levels in their marijuana. So we are known for our quality marijuana in the state. We should be proud of that.